Welcome to the Human Trafficking Awareness Training. As an education professional, understanding the dynamics of trafficking is an important step in helping protect and support the youth in your care. Human trafficking is a hidden crime affecting millions worldwide. Unfortunately, it happens in our communities every day. Human trafficking takes on many forms. Victims can be exploited for forced labor or commercial sex, often under coercion, fraud, or threats. Traffickers manipulate vulnerabilities such as poverty, immigration status, or emotional distress to control their victims. Furthermore, through technology, traffickers increasingly exploit victims online. Thousands of cases of human trafficking every year are reported in the United States alone. Florida ranks among the top 3 states for human trafficking cases. Florida is a prime target for traffickers because of its geographic location, its high levels of tourism, and its major agricultural industry. Additionally, the state's infrastructure can provide traffickers with easy movement and easy access to victims. Awareness of human trafficking begins with understanding the signs and recognizing its impact. Raising awareness helps shed light on this hidden crime and the realities faced by victims every day. If you or someone you know is being forced into work, prostitution, housework, farm labor, factory, retail or restaurant work, and cannot leave, call the Florida Human Trafficking Hotline at 855-352-7233 to access help and services. Let's address some common misconceptions. Some people believe that only women and girls are victims of trafficking, that it only happens in other countries, or that it always involves moving people across borders. Others think most trafficking cases involve strangers kidnapping victims, or that if someone isn't being physically held against their will, they aren't a trafficking victim. In reality, these statements are false. Anyone can be a victim of trafficking, and it happens everywhere. Most trafficking cases actually involve people who know the kidnapped victims, and victims come from all backgrounds. Under Florida Statute Section 787.06 2D, human trafficking means transporting, soliciting, recruiting, harboring, providing, enticing, maintaining, purchasing, patronizing, procuring, or obtaining another person for the purpose of exploitation of that person. There are 2 main categories: sex trafficking and labor trafficking. Sex trafficking is when someone is recruited, housed, transported, or otherwise obtained for the purpose of a commercial sex act, using force, fraud, or coercion. Crucially, if the person is under 18, it is always considered human trafficking, regardless of whether force, fraud, or coercion is involved. Labor trafficking involves making someone work against their will, either by physically overpowering, deceiving, or pressuring them in some way. Both rob victims of their freedom and dignity. It is time to uncover some of the most common misconceptions about human trafficking. Let's set the record straight. Only women and girls are victims. Not true. While they make up a large percentage, men and boys are trafficked as well. This only happens in other countries. Human trafficking happens in all 50 states in our own country. Most cases involve strangers kidnapping victims, right? Nope. Most victims are trafficked by someone they know, such as family members, partners, or employers. It always involves moving people across borders. Absolutely not. Victims can be exploited right in their own homes, schools, and communities. Victims always come from poor backgrounds. Nope, while poverty is a risk factor, victims come from all backgrounds. If someone isn't being physically held, they aren't a victim. Many traffickers use coercion, fraud, and psychological control to keep victims trapped. Media depictions often suggest trafficking is limited to children locked in basements in faraway countries. In reality, human trafficking is a violation of human rights using force, fraud, or coercion. It is about controlling individuals for exploitative reasons, showing up as forced labor, commercial sex, or other abusive situations. Now let's look at some scenarios to see if you can identify the type of trafficking involved. Scenario 1. Two 17-year-old girls respond to an open casting call online. The company pays for their travel, then tells them they weren't selected and owe money for the expenses. They are pressured into sexual acts to pay back the debt. Yes, this is sex trafficking because the girls are coerced into sexual acts through debt bondage. Scenario 2. A 16-year-old is kicked out of their home. Someone they know offers a place to stay in exchange for sexual favors, and the teen agrees because they have nowhere else to go. Yes, this is also sex trafficking. This is an exploitation of a minor, as any commercial sex act involving a child is trafficking, regardless of agreement. Scenario 3. A 14-year-old helps at their family restaurant every weekend. They do not get paid, but they are not forced to work and are free to stop whenever they want. No, this is not a form of human trafficking. Scenario 4. A 16-year-old boy and his family come to the US for work. He is given a job in a construction but is not allowed to leave, is forced to work long hours without pay, and is threatened with being reported if he refuses. Yes, this is an example of labor trafficking. It is a clear case of obtaining and maintaining a person for the purpose of exploitation. Data shows us the true scope of this problem. Understanding risk factors is essential because trafficking rarely happens at random. Traffickers target the vulnerable. It is a common misconception that human trafficking only happens in faraway countries. In reality, it is a serious and pervasive problem right here in the United States. Trafficking can occur in any community, and victims span all ages, races, genders, and nationalities. Gathering accurate data remains a significant challenge because many victims are difficult to locate, and often they do not even recognize themselves as victims. The numbers help us understand the sheer volume of this crisis. In 2023 alone, the National Human Trafficking Hotline received over 30,000 contacts through calls, text, and online messages. From those contacts, over 9,000 individual cases were identified. In our state, the Florida Department of Children and Family, or DCF, is the primary entity that receives these reports. Florida's cases generally fall into two primary categories. First is CSEC, or commercial sexual exploitation of a child, which involves allegations of sexual exploitation. Second is labor trafficking, which involves forced labor, slavery, or servitude that is not sexual in nature. In the 2023-2024 fiscal year, the Florida Department of Children and Families accepted over 2,000 reports of human trafficking involving over 1,500 children. Of the reported cases, 92% were classified as commercial sexual exploitation of a child, and 8% were classified as labor trafficking. Shockingly, more than 80% reported came from children living at home with a parent or caregiver, not in foster care. You might wonder why we focus so heavily on these numbers. Collecting this data is essential because it allows us to identify specific trends and assess the true scale of the problem in our communities. By understanding how common the issue is and identifying those most at risk, we can make informed decisions and take meaningful action. Finally, this data provides a vital feedback loop, showing us exactly how well our current prevention and intervention strategies are working. Human trafficking does not randomly happen. Targets are mostly vulnerable individuals. Knowing risk factors makes you more likely to recognize dangerous situations. Risk factors can include homelessness, running away, abuse or neglect, limited support systems, poverty, substance abuse, and vulnerabilities related to social media and online platforms. While no single sign is a confirmation of someone being a potential victim, there are several red flags to watch for. These may include behavioral changes, unexplained absences, unusual relationships, or possessing items that one may not otherwise be able to afford. You might also notice physical signs of abuse like unexplained injuries, signs of excessive control by others, restricted movement, or online grooming. It is vital that school personnel steps to protect the youth from human trafficking by recognizing risk and protective factors. You can help safeguard our youth by building connections, focusing on strengths and self-esteem, teaching healthy boundaries, and providing support and resources. Be a trusted adult who serves as a support system and aids in adult intervention. Traffickers use specific methods to groom youth for exploitation. This often begins with online grooming or emotional manipulation to isolate the victim from their support systems. They may also use coercion, verbal violence, or take unwanted photos to prepare the victim for exploitation. Preventing human trafficking starts with building a supportive environment for our students. As educators, we can help protect our youth by teaching state academic standards regarding human trafficking prevention and by creating opportunities for supportive peer relationships within the classroom. It is also vital to keep students and parents informed about digital safety and the specific risk factors associated with trafficking. Perhaps most importantly, you should strive to be a trusted adult who can serve as a reliable support system and aid in early intervention when a student is in trouble. If you suspect human trafficking, abuse, neglect, or abandonment of a child, you must act. Employees of the public school system are statutorily required to report if they have a suspicion of human trafficking. Notify your school counselor or an administrator. You must also report to the Florida Abuse Hotline by calling 1-800-962-2873 and report to law enforcement by calling 1-855-FLA-SAFE or contacting local authorities immediately. When reporting, share as much detailed information as you can. Don't wait for proof. Reasonable suspicion is enough to make a report. Most importantly, never approach or confront the suspected trafficker. Investigating suspicions on your own is not advised and should be left to the professionals. Make it a priority to connect the youth with helpful resources and specialized services. Additionally, you can play a key role in their healing journey by encouraging and supporting them through positive outlets and activities. We have covered a significant amount of information today to help you better protect Florida's students. To recap, we defined human trafficking and dispelled common myths and misconceptions that often hinder identification. We examined the scope of the problem through national and state data and identified the red flags and warning signs that indicate a student may be at risk. Finally, we discussed specific prevention strategies and the essential steps for responding to and reporting suspicions of trafficking to the proper authorities. As we conclude, remember these key takeaways. First, stay informed and continue to educate yourself and others about the risks and indicators. Second, empower youth by encouraging appropriate conversations about their safety and well-being. Finally, take action. Be vigilant, proactive, and stay engaged in efforts to combat human trafficking.